Good morning and welcome to the latest VU.CITY webinar. We'll be looking at the potential of our updated hide tool. It's previously known as the object remover tool. So lots of you, I'm sure, on this call will already have experience of using the object remover tool, potentially some of the good points about it, but also some of those limitations. The functionality still exists. However, we've listened to your suggestions to create a much improved version that opens the door for new use cases, and hopefully we'll start to see some of those today as we're going through. So during the demo, if you do have any questions, then please make use of the Q&A, and I'll do my best to answer them at the end. But also, it'd be great to hear your feedback following this demonstration of the tool. We're really only kind of diving into one tool today, so we shouldn't be talking for too long. But it'd be great to get your feedback and really kind of understand if this ticks a lot of those boxes in terms of those questions that you've been asking from us previously as well. So at this point, I'm just going to get started with the demo. It's going to be mainly just a demo of the tool. We'll have a quick kind of technical view of some of the processes that are involved as well. But then, we'll have that opportunity for those questions too. So let's just go straight into it. Let's go into a demo. So I've already loaded up a VU.CITY kind of scene. So I'm just going to log into VU.CITY here. Hopefully you can see my screen. So we're in Waterloo at the moment. Now, like I said, many of you on the call are users of the platform already and have been using the object remover tool. Now, the new hide tool sits in exactly the same place that object remover tool used to sit within tools. However, we've renamed it, and this renaming is actually giving more of an indication of how the tool works. We're never removing or deleting buildings within the platform. We're either just hiding them or removing them from the view that you've got within here, so you can start to work with your own buildings in the spaces that are occupied currently by buildings. So if I click on the hide tool, we now have the option to add a selection. So in the past, you would have one instance of the object remover tool running, and you would have to either select the buildings that you need and then clear the selection if you wanted to start again. But you'd have no chance or no way of going back to a previous option or group of selected buildings. So I'm just going to click on the buildings directly here. So you can see I've gone to the second option. We'll get onto the top option in a minute, where most of the changes have come from. But if I go to the click buildings directly option, I can click on the buildings and you can see we can select the whole building within here. So I can add multiple buildings to a selection. These then are now kind of within a group within here. So I can either choose to toggle all of those buildings off, hide all of those buildings in one go, as you can see, or bring them back. But I can also get into a bit more detail and name these buildings within here as well. So when you have folders, when you have projects with multiple hidden buildings, and in some views you might want to keep a building, in some views you don't want to keep a building, now it's possible to find the building that you're wanting to remove at that time in a very simple way. So I will just show you how you can do that. So let's look at the second building as an option, as an example. If I come to, in fact, building 4, we can see that's the church. I can just rename that now. And within this group, you can choose to have certain buildings on or off, so you can make changes as and when you need to through that project as well. Now, if I come to create a new selection, we again drop to this kind of top-down view, which we can't actually leave. It's not possible for us to leave that top-down view at this point, but I might want to include the iMac. Oh, sorry, just clicked the wrong thing there. I'm giving too much away here. I'm just going to delete this. I need to create a new selection. I need to click on the buildings directly. So if I choose the iMac building down here as an example, and the buildings are across the road here. Again, we can have two different selections running simultaneously, allowing those to be toggled on and off as well. So really, we're just trying to reduce the duplication of work that you're doing when setting up views, setting up different points of interest, removing buildings, and potentially even going forward and phasing on larger sites that you're working on as well. Now, that's great. That's pretty much the functionality that the Object Remover tool had, albeit now with the option to group and name your groups within here as well. That's really, really useful. However, it doesn't really, at this point, well, it adds a lot to the functionality, but it doesn't answer a lot of the questions that we were had around the more kind of fine details of hiding parts of buildings. So you can see here, and I'll just kind of describe or run through the reasons why the model is modeled in the way it is. But when I go to select a building, the whole building, the whole kind of contiguous area that you can see here is selectable. Now, in some cases, that's absolutely fine, and that works well. But in some cases, let's say you're working on this mass, but you don't actually want to remove the whole of the building because we've already got that really accurate modeling. You might just want to remove the corner where your extension is going to be. That's where it becomes a bit more difficult. Now, the reason why it's modeled like this is because we're modeling from aerial photography. So, of course, we're taking it from the top down, and we're not using legal boundaries to define where the modeling is going to be sort of chopped up and split. So we're using our eyes to determine what a building is. But also, it's very hard for us to preempt where buildings would need to be split and where they wouldn't prior to kind of uploading them into the platform that you've got here. And really, the third reason is for performance. If we split every building into many different buildings, let's take this terrace row as an example, then the performance of the system would start to struggle given the number of vertices and the number of buildings that are within the whole data set across the whole of London. So really, we've had quite a difficult task of trying to work out how it could be possible for our users to split buildings within the platform. And we've got there really with a new kind of thinking. This thinking is all about kind of hiding the objects that you can see within a view, within a polygon, and it really helps the process. So many of you might have in the past kind of got in touch with us, given us maybe a plan or a view around the sites that you're interested in splitting up. We would have gone away, probably taken a couple of days, maybe up to a week even, to split that within the back end, to then make that available, that split within the Object Remover. With the plotted selection tool that I've got here, it's possible for us to now do that. So in this example, I'm just going to go to the land registry query, and you can see here that actually this building split by legal boundaries is significantly smaller than the whole plot that you've got there. And we've got those two kind of blocks there that you can see within here. But it might be that I'm just doing an extension, or I'm just looking to increase the massing at the back of this scheme. So in this case, what I want to do is just draw using, if I go to the tool, go to hide tool, selection, plot selected area. What I want to do here is I want to chop out or remove this section. So what I'll do is just draw a point at this corner. I'll draw a point at this corner. And really now, as long as that building's included, as I continue drawing plotting points, that building will be hidden when I go to all buildings within here. So I can split that building, and immediately you can see now we've got that canvas for the create tool to be used, for models to be imported onto that site. But once you've created that area, we might know that it requires a little bit of adjusting to get it to the exact point that it needs to be. So if I just kind of move that polygon slightly, we can start to do that. Now I'm going to keep the front of that building in there. Of course, it's easier to do this from the initial kind of view, but you can see there, now the space that I want to start building my massings, I want to start creating in, that is free for me to do that. And that can be saved in different views, but we can also save, just like the direct selection tool, we can save these plotted areas and rename them as well. So let's say, within building. So just as an example, if I come to the create tool now and add my kind of creative points. In the past, we could ignore buildings if we wanted to drop right through a building, but now we just don't need to do that. I'm still going to ignore buildings at this point, but I'm just going to create my extension within here. Here we go. So hopefully you can see now, really reducing that time, that back and forth with us to get your kind of splits into the model really helps speed up that whole workflow and that dialogue that you're having at the very early stages of your kind of your planning and design stages as well. Now, what you'll notice here on this site is that we also have a tree that has kind of built its way or generated its way halfway through my building that I've got here as well. So what we do with trees is in London, we have almost 12 million trees, I believe, all of them accurate, of course. So we want to keep that modeling within here. In the past, your only option really to remove trees from this site would be all or nothing, which of course really isn't very helpful when you're wanting to show your building in the context where trees actually play quite a big part, especially if you're looking at visual impacts from ground towards the building, and there's a lot of tree cover. So we've had all or nothing. In the past, we'd have users come up with their own workflows, things like taking a couple of images, maybe one with all the trees on, one with all the trees off, and then changing the transparency so you can see through the trees, or just scribbling them out in Photoshop and other tools as well. But that's not ideal in any way. So the reason why all of these trees are on or off in the past is because they are not individual objects. It's all one data set, and these trees are then rendered individually automatically by the game engine as well. So we want to make it possible for users to not only split buildings, but remove individual trees within the platform. So if I go back to the hide tool, and let's create a new selection. I'm going to plot a selected area, and it's only these trees that I want to get rid of on this site. I'm going to plot a new selection. Within here, I can toggle the trees off. So now trees don't exist. But if I need to show where those trees were at a later stage, then I can always toggle those on. We're not deleting anything. It's just a view state where you can see or you can't see certain objects within that polygon or that line. So hopefully that is a massive game changer in terms of visualizing your screens, your scenes or sites at least. Very much taken from a lot of feedback that we've got from all of our customers throughout the years. But we've really come up with a good way of achieving this now, and really I'm happy with the results as well. So let's just toggle those trees back off, and I've got the full site as required available to view in the way that I want it. So I've shown splitting buildings. I've shown removing individual trees, but it might be, in fact, the case that that's not enough. Actually, you know, or you're aware that there are going to be some major changes to the terrain, the topography around the site, and those changes need to be shown as you're visualizing your scheme through planning as well. In which case, in the past, you would have been able to bring in a terrain model into the VU.CITY. However, that model would always have to have sat above the ground or the terrain that is currently there, as there is no way of excavating. So again, using the hide tool, I'm going to take this full site, or a slightly larger site, let's say. I can do a quick selection. We're going to plot the selected area. I know that around the church, we're going to be doing a lot of landscaping. Maybe there's a new garden going in. And I have a terrain model elsewhere that I can then import. But I know I want to excavate the land that's already there within here. So just before I do that, you can see as well, as you're creating your site, you've got the measurements in the same way that the create tool works. You've got your measurements. But if I start clicking spacebar, you can also see the AOD of those points and the eastings and the northings of those points as well. But in this case, I'm just going to toggle those off. I want to actually remove the terrain. So I've just clicked the terrain off, and the terrain is no longer visible. So within here, now you can see that we can start to build terrain that is lower than the previous terrain that was visible. It might be that you're looking at landscaping around your site, but you might also be looking to add a new road or other elements as well. And what I'll do is I'll jump over to another site where I've kind of prepared a few pieces earlier in terms of imports to really show that in kind of a larger, more broad master plan setting. And hopefully you can start to see the full potential, and potentially even more that we haven't thought about, and we'd love to take that feedback too. So yeah, what I'm going to do at this point is just load a previous project that I have. So load the project. I'll discard all the work that I've done. But you can see as I'm doing that, the hide tool all the material overrides and object highlighter and the hide tool is all within the things that we saved within here. In terms of plotted areas as well. But I'm just going to load this new area. And you can see there's a lot of work's been going on here behind the scenes, but what I'll do is just hide or kind of remove those for now. So we can't see them. So let's say I'm working on this whole site and we've gone through the process of understanding what could potentially be built on this site as well. I might have a few options that I've gone into, looked at within here. But the first thing that I would do is actually create a boundary. So I've created this boundary. Now, if I toggle the boundary on, we can remove, of course, that terrain. We can remove the trees within the trees boundary that I've created previously. We can remove the trees from the inner site boundary. But actually, at this stage, I just want to remove the buildings. And we're keeping this building. For some unknown reason, we're keeping that. But I can just take all of those buildings off. And in the past, if you use the object remover tool, you can understand how laborious that task would have been, clicking on every single little shed and point, even trolley parks and things like that in the past. But I'm just going to toggle those off. Now, I've run this site through Site Solve. And if anyone joined the last webinar that we did in the Site Solve, you'd have a bit more of an understanding on that. It's a generative design tool that allows you to take a site like this and start kind of bringing or creating options around that site. to understand the capacity, the potential, and other things like that. So I'm just going to bring in, exactly as I said, one I made earlier, a site solve generation. So I'm just going to drag and drop that. I'm dragging it in from, in fact, I'll just bring my folders over onto this screen so you can see the process in full. So I've got that site solve generation. I'm just going to drag and drop that into the platform. Now I know that this is a site solve model. It'll automatically generate that. If I click import, then my options appear straight away. And I've got a couple of options here that are overlapping, as you can see. We can test those individually, but I'm going to stick with the second option that we've got here. Straight in the site. So that's coming in without the buildings there. But immediately now, it's looking very clunky. The ground just isn't representing what would be there in terms of the ground going forward. So actually, we want to build a terrain or build a ground that represents the site a lot better. And we can do that. The first step of that process would be to firstly create that red line boundary. But now, of course, I've already got that red line boundary created. I can export that red line boundary. If I come up to this tick box and go to the kind of standard export site, we can actually export that now as a DXF file, geolocated to OSGB coordinates. Of course, we've got the same options that run throughout the platform in terms of exporting to the project or personal drive. But I would export that to my project drive. That's available then as a DXF line drawing with those kind of plotted heights on it as well. For me to then take into, and if I just jump over now to one of my slides that I had previously, into my design package of choice. So in this case, we're showing how we created a kind of site or terrain model in 3ds Max. So we've imported the DXF area. If I just click next, we have then overlaid that area, checking the geolocation against the terrain model that we're using. Now, if you do want the terrain model to match exactly, then we also have a modeling team or a model kind of a geometry request site where you can actually purchase sections of or pieces of the VU.CITY model to use in this way or other ways as you see fit as well. And some of you make full use of that already. But in this case, I've just kind of lifted the line off the model in this 3D perspective just to show that a bit better. Hopefully you can see it there. But we've got that terrain model and we've matched the geolocation. Now what we're doing at this point is creating an extruded shape to using that DXF area, so we can cookie cut out the exact site that we need. And then once we've done that, we can use the Boolean function to cookie cut the terrain model that I just mentioned. And now you've got a lot cleaner model that will fit that site exactly. So let's just jump back over to VU.CITY. There we go. And to one that I made earlier. So let's remove the boundary. I want to remove the buildings as well. So let's remove the buildings too. And at this point, I've already got a model. There we go. So I've got the proposed master plan. If I just drag and drop that into the platform, I know this is a 3ds Max model. It's already geolocated and it's the meters. And I'm going to click import. And there we go. Straight away, we can see a lot cleaner model, firstly, but it actually represents the vision for the site a lot better. And it really helps through that kind of visualization process through planning as well. You can start to showcase, start to talk through some of the talk through some of the kind of options that you've got there and reasoning for those as well. So you can obviously see the routes that we've got matching along with the kind of sites that we're running as well. Of course, we've got these trees in here. So I'm just going to continue to kind of add to this site really. So I'm just going to hide those trees because actually we don't want the trees that are initially there or originally there. So I'm just going to hide those trees. And within here, as you probably saw before, we've got a number of kind of files that I'm ready to bring in, including vehicles and street furniture, but I'm just going to bring in the trees. And these are coming in exactly the same way. So 3ds Max in meters, and I'm going to import those. So it might take a little while to come in. The trees are a lot heavier than the terrain model that I'm bringing in. So it won't take too long. But whilst that's going, I can also kind of prepare. We're at 59%. I can also prepare bringing in another model. In fact, I'll just keep that off the screen. So there we go. Those trees are in now. But I'm also going to bring in street furniture. And all of these models, they're all coming in as FBX models in the same way that you would have been importing buildings in the past as well. So hopefully that came in. I'm not too sure. It did. I think I have to zoom in further to start seeing that. There we go. We've got some bike racks and very small pieces of furniture within here. There we go. Some picnic tables as well. But I'll also bring in those other layers that we've got within there. Right, let's just drop that back. Come back to the layers. Let's add the vehicles. And if you have multiple files, you can drag and drop multiple in at the same time within here as well. Let's bring in the pieces. 3ds Max mixers. So you can see we're starting to build that view that we can kind of orbit around at this point, but we can also then go down to ground level and start to understand a site in more detail as well. So pedestrians are almost in. There we go. They're in there. So at this point, we can use all of the other tools. So because we're importing this modeling as terrain modeling, in fact, I'm not sure if I did, and I should really show that process. So just bear with me 1 second, because it is a very significant part of this. So if I go to import again and find the master plan, I'm actually going to remove this master plan and re-import the master plan. Because one thing that I didn't do, and it's really clear that you do this, although it's a 3ds Max model and it's meters, I actually imported it as a building. And because it's terrain, we want the cameras to work differently when we go down to ground level. So as a building, we would have been able to snap a camera onto a surface of that building, but then not navigate around that building or around the terrain. In this case, we want it as terrain. So I'm just going to import that again as terrain. And then show then the kind of functionality that allows once we go down to ground level. So I'm going to snap onto the building. I'm going to drop my camera down here. Just going to make sure I've got everything toggled off that I need to. And at this point, in the same way as before, I can start to move around the kind of the whole site. And this compared to having the original kind of road layouts and other options within there, is of course far better, and really help kind of push the idea, and sell the ideas that you're running through as well. Okay, so that's everything kind of above ground. But kind of inadvertently, we also created an opportunity to start looking at visualizing things below ground in some areas. Now, like I said, this is a bit of a kind of add-on. It's not something we really planned for, but definitely something we'll explore a bit further. And that's really kind of visualizing data below ground. So currently we don't have any data sets, and we wouldn't really imagine our users currently using the data sets that we do have to understand what's going on below ground, other than the kind of ground formation. I think you can look at ground material. And also we've got the tube lines in there, albeit they're not very accurate in terms of the exact location of that tube on the ground. But if you're working on a project and maybe you're working with the engineers or others on the site, maybe you're aware of certain levels of activity that are going on below ground, then of course you can visualize that. So I'm just going to hide again the proposed master plan that I've got in here. And I've got one more data layer, one more layer that I can import actually, which is Pipeworks. So I'm just going to bring that into the platform. Again, 3ds Max, I'm going to go to scale, meters, and this is a building in this way. I'm going to import that, and now we can start to visualize some of the below ground activity within here. So you can see those pipes. And it might be that actually when you're going through looking at, let's say you're creating a presentation and you just want to show the reasoning behind having certain routes in certain locations, or the reasoning why buildings are in certain orientations or within certain areas, then you can start to do that and visualize it in this way. Again, you can just toggle on, toggle off, so you can see that road kind of running along the pipeline here. So hopefully that kind of spurs a bit of interest in terms of looking at new use cases that you can go into, and the potential there as well. We think is really exciting. And of course, all of these, because you can toggle this all on and off, you can use it in conjunction with other tools that we've recently released as well. Things like the visibility states, which will allow you to, in this case, take an image with the current view on, and then perhaps if I duplicate that image, I might want to show the view without the terrain there. So I'll just remove that proposed master and save that. But you've got those two options if I come to present those now within a meeting that you're running here. So I'll just go over those two options. You've got the view there. This could be the original view as well, but then also the kind of works that are underground as well. Okay, so I mean, I've gone through quite a lot there. I mean, it's one tool, but I've managed to speak for about half an hour on it. So I've impressed myself there at least. But of course, we would like your feedback. It'd be great to get your feedback on it and kind of go through it in more detail with any customers that are interested in giving it a go. In terms of the release date, I believe we're looking at a release date of next week, although we can be a bit clearer on that, a bit closer to the time. So you'll be able to get your hands on it very soon. But yeah, it's all really come through your kind of requests, your feedback and questions that you've had with us, especially for me, when I'm showing people for the first time, it often comes up, how do you remove a single tree or can you remove the terrain? I'm really happy that now that I can say yes to all of those questions. But yeah, we're continuously looking at that feedback to determine what we're going to work on next. Right, okay, so I've got a couple of questions that I can see already. Please, if you do have any questions, then feel free to and I dropped them in the Q&A as well. So the first question is, can a boundary be imported from a geolocated DWG file, or does it have to be drawn in VU.CITY? So this is something that we have thought about and something that is within the kind of continual development. We're aware that you might already start in 2D or have a DWG file that you want to import into VU.CITY. Currently, it's not within the functionality, but it's definitely something that we want to achieve. We can see the benefits of being able to do that if you've started elsewhere and you want to bring in your models within here. Or if you're starting new projects and you want to have the same boundaries selectable in different projects as well. So yeah, hold the space on that one. It's definitely something that we're looking into doing fairly soon. So we've got another question. Are there any plans to have your own internal library for trees other than FBX models? Currently, I mean, again, it's something that we've discussed internally. It's not too high up on the roadmap, given that, as you said, you can import external FBX models, and that workaround isn't too difficult at this point. We do have a library of things, objects that you might want to import as well. So if you get in touch, we can get back in touch with you as well and share those. So in your own projects, you can just drag and drop those in the way that I was today as well. But yeah, definitely something for us to consider a bit further. Okay, so I've also got the question: can you use the hide tool or hide building sections in the Z-axis? So removing floors vertically or above a certain level of floors. Currently, that's not possible. The polygons that you create, they will drop down through the model, so it will always cut vertically. So unfortunately not. But it's definitely a good suggestion. It's something to consider. Of course, if you are importing your own buildings, kind of going back to the original workflow, you could import two separate options or iterations to show that. But currently cutting through our model is really kind of the polygon on the ground. So I've got a question as well. Will the tool be available in the web browser and that version of VU.CITY? Yes. So I'm currently using it on the desktop version, purely because we're streaming here as well, and just to make it a bit more streamlined. But yeah, the VU.CITY cloud version that's kind of streamed through your web browser. And the app version, they're both exactly the same. They'll be released in exactly the same way, and they have exactly the same functionality as well. So yes, it will be available. So I've got a question: does the terrain extract and re-import process have to be done through 3ds Max, or is Rhino and SketchUp possible? So yeah, I mean, really, all you're exporting in this case is a DXF file. That DXF is geolocated. Now you can open up that DXF in most CAD programs, including, I believe, SketchUp and Rhino. That's just what we were using in-house, but yeah, it might not be exactly the same process in terms of creating that shape and cutting in that way. But the process will be very similar, and yeah, you can bring in your Rhino and SketchUp models as you have done in the past as well. I've been able to. It's really just creating a terrain model instead of a building model to bring into the platform. Okay, so I've got another question, which I might have to revert back to regarding ZTVs as well. So the question is, if we run a ZTV, will the building that's been hidden still be considered? Now, I believe it wouldn't be considered given that it's running the buildings that are visible. But I would just have to double check that, and I'll be able to get back to you quite quickly. I will make a note of that comment. Okay, so yeah, I mean, it's got loads of questions within here. Probably don't have too much more time to go through those. Um, but I would like to take this opportunity, and of course, feel free to kind of get in touch and run through any questions in person, either with your account manager or with me as well. I'm just going to kind of move forward slightly. Sorry, going all in the wrong direction here. Move forward slightly, but yeah, you can get in touch with your account manager or me personally. My details, as you just saw there briefly, will be visible in a minute. But just before I do that, I wanted to highlight another event that we're running. Now we spend a lot of time kind of talking about ourselves in webinars like this, but often it's quite nice to hear from the people that are actually using the platform. So what we've kind of organised coming up in next week is the VU.CITY Creator Summit, where we have 6 users, 7 users here, kind of running through their experiences of using the platform. It's an afternoon event. It is from about 3 till 5 o'clock, and we can share a link with more information on that. So if you'd like to come along and have a look at some of those stories, some of those projects that have used VU.CITY from the names that you can see here on the screen, then that would be great. Like I said, we'll share a link to register for that. And hopefully, yeah, you won't be listening to us talking about ourselves all the time. It'll be coming actually from those that are benefiting and using the platform too. So just like I said, my details are there in terms of my email address. We'll send out an email to everyone that's attended anyway with those links that I mentioned. Any questions as well, please let us know. Like I said, that'd be really, really helpful. But thanks a lot for attending, and hopefully see you in a week's time.